How's it going, guys? Sam from West Meadow Rabbits here. In today's video, I'm continuing my 3-part series on what to feed rabbits. If you missed the first video, you can go ahead and click back there to look at it. It gives you a broad overview of a good diet for rabbits. But today we're going to discuss hay specifically. So as I mentioned in the previous video, hay is any dried plant material that isn't processed in any way, and it's just fed to the rabbits after it's dried. So there's really three main types of hay on the market that you'll see. And all of them are appropriate for rabbits, but in different circumstances. I have 2 of the 3 here. The first one I'm going to start with is orchard grass, or grass hay, as it's typically called. And as you can see by this bundle I have here, it's really just dried blades of grass. It's got some seed heads on it, which the rabbits really enjoy. And occasionally you'll get some weeds, which, believe it or not, the rabbits really like. And so I use this because it's got a good diversity to it as far as plant material, although technically orchard grass is just one species. In addition, orchard grass is lower in protein and pretty good amount of energy, but not as high energy as some other hays. It's a good sort of middle of the road hay that gives you a lot of fiber, a lot of nutrients without too much energy and too much protein. So you could feed orchard grass hay to a rabbit that's on pellets. As a matter of fact, that's what I do. When my rabbits eat pellets, they get a good handful about this size every morning, and then they get their pellets in the evening. And that sort of ensures that their digestive system is working properly. Rabbits have a digestive system based on fermentation, sort of like a cow, but less complicated. And it's got a very delicate balance. And in order to feed that bacteria, you need to provide basically fiber, very similar to a human, actually. So this will do that for you. Another really common type of hay that's similar to orchard grass in a lot of ways is timothy hay. Again, there's not that many differences between orchard grass and timothy hay. It's just another species of grass. It tends to have a little less weeds in it, which is actually why I don't use it. I think the weeds add a nice variety to the rabbit's diet, which I'll get to in the 3rd video. And it also is just usually more expensive. This is about usually the cheapest hay you can get, which would be $10 where I am for a 40-pound bale, which is a pretty good deal. That'll last you a while. So timothy is very similar to this. It's just slightly more expensive. Anybody who tells you that rabbits need timothy hay or they need a specific type of hay, that's not true. Okay, and orchard grass and timothy hay are basically the same thing. There's nothing special about timothy. With that being said, for all hays, the nutrition does vary between each hay, but it also varies between cuttings of that hay. At different times of the year, usually you get more than one hay harvest, sort of like mowing a lawn. They do it 2 or 3 times a year. And different cuttings will have different nutritional properties. Now for the amateur and even most advanced people, that really doesn't matter that much, with the exception of alfalfa, which I'll get to in a sec. But for most other hays, it's not that big of a deal. The rabbit's not going to mind either way. Which brings us to the 3rd type of hay that's pretty common you'll see with livestock, and that's alfalfa. So as I mentioned in the other video, alfalfa is not actually a grass, it's a legume. So you can see you have these large stalks right here, and then you have this dusty stuff, which is really the dried leaves of the plants, and that's where most of the nutrition is. Got a bunch of dust right here. That is actually from the plant leaves, as I said, and a legume is much more rich in protein and energy than a grass. So as a result, alfalfa is much denser, it's much higher in protein, and it's much higher in energy. On the flip side though, it also has a lot of calcium in it, and rabbits are extremely efficient metabolizers of calcium, so they don't need a lot of calcium. So sometimes alfalfa can cause problems with the urinary tract in rabbits, sometimes, but usually not by itself. Usually there's other stuff going on. Incidentally also, any pelleted feed you're buying at the store is going to have alfalfa as its main ingredient. So that is something to take in consideration. Basically, what you want to do with hays is you have to either decide, is this going to be your cornerstone of your diet or a supplement? If you're feeding pellets, it's just a supplement. This good handful of timothy or orchard grass hay is all they need in the morning to keep their roughage in good shape. You can even free feed it, which I think is ideal if you can get a nice hay manger that doesn't let it go to waste. But they will throw this around and a lot will fall through the cage and be wasted if you can't find a good way to contain it. Now alfalfa, if you're feeding pellets, should not be fed to rabbits unless they are breeding or they're babies that are just growing up. And by breeding I mean females specifically when they're pregnant and lactating. That'll give them that extra boost in addition to the pellets, and it'll give the babies that extra head start. But after the babies hit 10 to 16 weeks, you can stop feeding alfalfa and switch them over to this. You still leave them on free feed pellet, But alfalfa is really only necessary for rabbits under a lot of duress when they're really working hard. If you have a really high intensity breeding schedule, it can be useful there. Now also, on the flip side, if you're not feeding pellets or you're feeding very, very little pellets, alfalfa is going to make up a much bigger part of your rabbit's diet. That's where they're going to be getting most of their protein and energy from. It's going to act as that power source for the rabbit, and you'll be supplementing with other things, which I'll get to in the third video. We'll talk about feeding rabbits basically without pellets. But that's primarily what alfalfa is used for. So if you're pellet feeding, it's not much of a concern, except as a supplement for breeding does and young baby rabbits. However, if you're not pellet feeding, alfalfa is going to become much more important. Regardless of which route you choose, your rabbit should always have access to a decently high fiber hay such as orchard grass. They're going to need that to just maintain that gut health. And again, even if you're not feeding pellets, I still think you should have some access to this, and you can incorporate it with alfalfa however you want. But yeah, so those are the big things with hay. When you're buying hay, you want to look for fresher is better. Most feed stores will have when it was cut. Now that being said, you're in the middle of winter, you're not getting fresh hay, but you should look at it. It should be as green as possible, and it shouldn't look moldy. It shouldn't be wet to the touch. It should be nice and crunchy, dry, but green is awesome. So the greener your hay is, you know that it was dried quickly and it sealed in all those good nutrients before it was baled up. If it's got that brownish dead look to it, you might not have a choice, but it's not ideal. Similarly, it should not be dank. It should not have a moldy smell. It shouldn't be wet. I forgot to mention alfalfa will be significantly more expensive than orchard grass hay. And typically this is sold in 100-pound bales. So be ready to have a buddy if you're buying this. I think where I am, alfalfa goes for 40 pounds, 100-pound bale. With that being said, that'll last me half a year, even with a lot of rabbits. The 40-pound bales go quicker, but I feed this a lot more freely. Sorry about that, my camera cut me off there. But again, feeding hay is pretty straightforward. I would not recommend buying hay online or from a pet store. It's going to be very small. It's not going to be economical in those little bags. It's ridiculous. And it's usually not going to be that good quality either. Your best bet is to go to a feed store, buy it by the bale. And it's good to have on hand. You know, hay stores for a really long time. If you keep it dry and out of sunlight, it will last. And it'll provide you a good, reliable food source. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Hope it was informative. If you have any more questions, or you'd like me to talk about something else, please leave a comment below. I'd be more than happy to talk with you. The next video will be about feeding rabbits without pellets, basically. And it's an interesting one, so I hope you head on over there and check it out. In the meantime, please be sure to like and subscribe. And until next time, guys, thanks a lot.